All right, you guys, well, let's get started. We're going to talk about setting up checklists on and connecting checklists to your portal today. So we're going to cover the basics of like why that you would use checklists. Um, we're going to talk about setting up your checklist, and then we'll actually show you how to link the checklist to the portal, which is through a sidebar link. And then I'll also talk a little bit about testing checklists and some of the things that tend to come up in questions that we get when people are actually implementing putting the checklist together. And so, why would you do checklists? Basically, to keep you more organized, keep your team more organized. It'll also, if you allow checklists to be used publicly or through the portal with your families, your team doesn't have to do quite so many scanning and uploading of documents and checking through your email. It's a very clear space for your families to interact with the documents that are required of them to get prepared for adoption or foster care. I'm thinking it also just consolidates everything. So your team, for the most part, knows where to go. And I say for the most part because there's always kind of miscellaneous documents that are needed for support. And that's not probably going to be shown in checklists, but it will be shown in their documents. And I'll show you how, I'll try and remember to show you how those things connect as well, in case you're not quite sure of how that looks. So today, checklists are being used for the licensing and home study process for sure in preparing families for this journey. They can also be used a lot for adoption documentation. And what am I thinking about that? I'm doing a lot of using the portal for post-adoption reports. I do a little bit of this little admin work right here. Mute. Okay. And then lengthy forms. So I've seen agencies, the post adoption reports a lot of times are lengthy, but we've got some agencies doing autobiographies in the checklist and um, I think that is one of the longest ones, but like application forms also is very lengthy. There's just a lot of information being collected that can be linked onto checklists. You should be able to do your checklist for your team or volunteers and background checks as well. I sort of like background checks being a portion of the background check. And we can potentially talk to that, and maybe we want to have an entire session just dedicated to background checks altogether. There's a lot going on with that. Um, okay, so when we're starting and setting up the checklist, there's things that you want to consider. And so I talk about this a lot. So I want to keep this portion brief and get to actually moving around the system. But we need to think of like, do we need this thing one time or do we need it many times? And the clearest example I think is this needed just one time for the case like a contract? Or do I need to gather this piece of information every time the family is ready to be relicensed or have an updated home study? Or do I need this for every person who lives in the home, like a birth certificate to be collected for each person? Where it might be that there's only parent one and parent two, or it might be that grandma, we've got three kids in the home already. We don't know what size that family is yet. So it needs to expand. And when it needs to expand, we need a table. We need to put the data collection, the fields that we're collecting on a different table than the case, because the case is really going to only allow one spot unless we have two fields, like for parent one and for parent two. Next thing to consider is whether it's going to be a document or a form. So we've got terms inside of our guides so that you can refer to it on a regular basis. But a document is an electronic document like a PDF or a Word doc that will be uploaded or downloaded from SAM. A form is a data entry piece into the system. So let me just pause for a second. Never mind. I think we're good now. A form is going to be doing data entry into the system. So, like an application form where we want the family to actually type in their name and address and who lives in their home and where have they lived in the last 5 years and their medical conditions and things like that. When we want that type of information to be in our systems so that we can pull it into a template, or our team can have it at their disposal quite easily for reference, that might be a form. And then I think you also want to decide who's responsible for completing this task. And we want to really encourage some efforts on the family because they have to do it anyways. So we can really put some of the documentation requirements, not that your team needs to upload them, but again, using the checklist through the family portal to allow the family to support you with that task. Otherwise, if it's your team, it's really designating who on the team. Is it a coordinator? Is it the home study writer? Is it a program director that needs to review? Just sort of lining that out. Okay. And then before you get into checklists, I really think it's important to prepare. A lot of times we'll have discussions and um, we're of course everybody wants to be at Z, right? And so I sort of sometimes use the like, we really want abs, but you have to do every crunch or whatever, however you work your abs out in order to get there before. And this is sort of that process. Yes, we want the checklist to be implemented, but you need to know what you want to be collected first. And I think this is simple of like, well, it's, I say simple, but it's not simple. Process is never simple necessarily, but I just want, what I think is simple is like take it outside of Sam first, putting it on paper so you can just sort of draft out what is it that you want to get done. Um, I think sometimes transitions are hard for people to recognize as part of the process. Sending that email is a part of your process. And so if you can think that yes, or remember, right, that and note out that this needs to be done, we can use the system to send that email for you. So your team clicks a button and that email is prepared. Your team doesn't need to write it or go off and find the template and copy and paste it into their email. Those are all sort of tasks that we're not recognizing are getting done with an email. And that's where Sam can really come in and help you with getting that done quicker. So putting it on paper, and of course, I've got it on paper, and why would I go to paper? I really don't recommend that. I recommend that you put it into an electronic format because then you can start, when you're ready to get into Sam, you don't have to type it all out again. You can copy and paste. The other thing I think that is important for preparation is pulling all your e-documents together. So those documents that you want to provide to the family to download, that they will then upload to you, pulling them all together into zip files that if you need our team to support you with putting it together, it's easy to transfer that information to us. And even if it's not, it's organized for you so that you can have it again at your disposal when you're ready to go into the system. And then the last thing that we'll talk about is just testing, right? So making sure that your team is um, familiar with seeing checklists inside of SAM, and then also the visibility that your family has or whoever might be utilizing a checklist. Um, so seeing it from the portals so you know what it looks like from their side. I think videos are super helpful of walking your team through. We've also heard a lot of success with everybody on the team sitting for 30 minutes or an hour, and we're going to go together, everybody with their own laptop, clicking the buttons to go through the client experience. So everybody logging in, having their own test record being created, and then logging in as that test record so they can see that. I also think it's important for you to know how passwords work. So when your families start actually interacting, that you'll know how to give that information to them. There are some guides in our support that I can try and reference you to as well. And so now let me go and log in right here. And let me just remind you, if you have any questions, you can totally send them into the chat and I will try watch my time. I feel like I got through that well enough so we have lots of time to actually be in Sam and then talk together. Okay, so checklists. When you are a full administrator, you can access settings and then there's a checklist configuration. So this is where the checklists get built as far as what do you want to provide as tasks that your team or the families complete, or whatever client type that you're working with, because it doesn't we talk a lot about the families because I think that's a primary space for you to find a lot of efficiencies in. However, again, your persons, your team members, your donors, board members, things like that might also, volunteers, they might connect with these records as well. So, that being said, you will choose which type of entity you're looking at. And then when you get into this section, you will see either items that are already built in, like we've got a parent education section, or you might see nothing. And I think it actually says there's nothing here. So if I were to remove this parent education section, it would say there's nothing. As your checklists get longer and longer, especially when you click on edit item order, Sam can be a little laggy. It's just doing a lot of processing. So there is this new section filter where you can pull down to just administer the one section that you're looking at a time. Okay, so you're working on one thing and it's just going to help you focus and concentrate, plus allow the system to work better. Okay. Okay, so then let me say this. I think what I want to talk about next is just where checklists exist for families or for other entity
Trouble with
types.
that.
Okay, so under settings,
Yeah.
checklist. This is going to be a public form. Let me go in here, mute some folks. Okay, and under public forms, we'll find the family case checklist. It should look like this for the family. Um, I think sometimes it says family dash client checklist, but this is what this is. When you click on, let's look at actually the edit first. Well, mine actually has stuff because I have added to it, but it can be actually pretty clear. It may have expiring documents if your site was set up like this year. Otherwise, it may not have that, and that's a sub form that can be added if that was something that you wanted to add. But a lot of times it looks really empty, and it's going to actually remain empty because it's going to depend per program, per stage of the process that your family or record type is in, what is shown. So it actually is a pretty blank, empty page. You can always edit public forms through a link kind of up here to put messaging. And then there's a link down at the bottom. Well, there's two links for bottom messaging. So what's above and what's below the submit button that you can change to play with how your forms look. If in your public forms you wanted to do a checklist for other record types, I think this is what it looks like. It's like the foster family public checklist, the public checklist. Over and over, you should see that. Of course, I don't actually see that in here. Let me look at my master site. I think it's there. And if you don't have it, I do need to know. So if you'll maybe send an email to support, we should have that in everybody's site at this point. Let me look over here. I'm not seeing it in my birth mother. I see it in my family public, kind of the same thing. So I might actually need to look into that. It should be there, but I'm not seeing it in mine. So we'll need to push that back out. And I would assume and maybe I'll just ask you guys at the end, those are listening, if you happen to go in and look and see. I'm not seeing it. So I don't actually need a message. I'll go and check and make sure that it's complete and get done and let you guys know. So let's talk about families and the checklist here. So there's a common well, let me say this. Let me jump back. So I'm going to add a checklist item and show you how that functions. And then I'm going to choose a different table and show you how that functions too, so that I'll show the error that sort of comes up when that happens and how you handle that. Okay, so I'm going to create something that I think is done a one time, which is just an agreement. I'm going to put this on, I'm going to call this like the application process. Keep this sort of simple. It's like something that's happened after once we've got an application is received, I want to review, and then I'm going to need an agreement. So the field is the actual task item that you want done, and that is going to always and forever be a date field. I can either choose a field from a table that exists, right? So I could choose the application approved date, or if this is such a new site, you may have to build a new field in the system, and that would be using this link here, which is create a new field. By default, Sam puts the table as the case, and this is where we had that conversation about, is it done one time for this person, this record, or this client, if we want to think of them as clients rather than records. Is it done one time, or do I do this multiple times? In which case, it's probably not going to be on the case table, and it is going to be on a table like background checks or home study or the adoption or the post adoption reports. But in this case, I'm going to show, I'm going to do like an adoption agreement receive date. Right? So the moment that I'm capturing that adoption agreement. There's a response time that I can add, and I might say that I would really like this to be done 5 days from the application approved date. That would be great if I could get some kind of coordination with the family to get that at that point in time. Sometimes this doesn't make sense when it's something that the family has to do. So you might just think about whether it's a decision that you'll make, whether it makes sense to have a due date or it doesn't. If it doesn't, you just leave it empty. Okay, it doesn't have to be entered, it's just empty. And certainly you can click whether it's just specific to business days, or if it comes in on Thursday, I need it by Monday, that kind of a thing. The responsible employee. So we're not able to set that this is the responsibility of the family. So in that case, it would be not set. Or you can choose it's a specific employee, and this is somebody that works on your team. It is filtered by they have a login enabled and their person type equals employee staff. So when you are creating, pause for a second. Let's work from home with kids. Hold on one second. Let me mute myself. Hey, Ethan. I'm on a call being recorded. Thanks. And even though you may not have heard me, the video may well have heard me. I don't know. So trying to be real gentle with working from home. All right, guys. So whether it's a specific employee, when you are setting up your person records, right, which are all your users or anybody else that sort of works in and around with you on your programs, for sure, if they work for your team, you should set their person type as employee staff. But that person type field is a way that you can designate what kind of relationship that person record has to others in your system. Otherwise, you can set it by the role. So if your organization is larger and you have many coordinators or many social workers or many program directors, you might have established on your family record or child record, whoever, different roles. These are going to show up here. These are specific to what is available for the family because that's the kind of checklist that I'm doing. So I've got a field on the family case table called social worker or case manager that is linking to person records. Okay. And so it knows who to email to and who to connect to when you have that person record filled out and fleshed out. So I can set it here. Um, the next thing down, um, let's see, I guess I missed this, is like what's shown in my task is like, do I want it to be shown on the home page? So that is right here are things that have to come up and do. I'm not sure that I have anything in this system at all because it's a very clean new system. Um, so yeah, so we don't actually have anything, but should things be coming overdue or are done, or excuse me, not are done, are up and coming in the next month or 2 months or whenever, they'll be those checklist items will be displayed on the homepage, and that's what this checklist part is asking. So I can either show it or not. It's a choice. Um, and I guess the one last thing I want to say about this is checklist items are great, and they can also be cumbersome for your team if your team is not actually utilizing them. They're not actually marking things off. It can look like everything's undone when really those things have been done in the past. It's just data entry. Um, that is the challenge for people and getting that done. So if it's not helpful, it's just not. I can say for myself, like I get things, my tasks that are done in my system when a new client joins, like this email gets out, things like that, because I start to remember what happens. But I still have these checklists where I didn't do the data entry, and it looks like sometimes, like I haven't gotten 20, 30 things done when it's months ago that item got completed. So if it's not helpful to be seen there, unchecking it could be more helpful for your team. Okay. Um, all right. So now I'm going to talk about documents. So remember, this is like the PDFs, the Word documents, a table, some type of document that you want um, uploaded to the site is what's going on right here. So I can either select a document if something exists. So I do have like a signed contract here. I could say that that is it. I might say also, right? And so I could choose that that's the field that I want. Or I can create a document field, which a lot of times is going to be what happens with a brand new site is you're creating something new. Even if it's not a brand new site, if it's a new to you document, it's probably not in the system already. And so you'll create a new document. Sam goes ahead and um, titles it the same title that we titled it here. And in my opinion, I would move things off like received. Okay. The document type is going to be what feels like sort of a third time of labeling this, and it is. When I go over to a family record, I want to make sure that you know what this means. When a document is uploaded through the checklist or through any form, it's also added into the document section. And so the document section is going to be a repository of all the documents collected from various sections in the system um, that you've got set up. And the document type then is listed here. So in this section, I want it to be labeled the adoption agreement, and that's why we've got this tertiary portion that's coming up here. Your checklist. So we've got them listed here. And that's what I'm selecting here. It may or may not exist, right? A lot of times in new sites, it doesn't exist. So there's a link to create a new document type, or you can select one of the items if it does already exist. Things like, in my opinion, like a medical exam or a birth certificate. I don't know that you need to have a document type for every birth certificate potential that exists, or even having one for parent one, parent two, other persons in home. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's sort of that's again, it's a choice. If you have it as birth certificate, you can search your documents by birth certificate and then click open them up and see which one that you're actually looking for. It's a choice. you know. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and add this. I'm going to create new from existing, and I just removed the received because I think it would sound a little funny if I showed it later. And so let's say this document upload section is actually only for checklists that have a document that you want to upload. Some checklist items are for you to send an email or to make an approval of something, or they are the tracking of a particular date that something is done, like an interview or a home visit. It doesn't have to be entered, and if it's not entered, you leave it on the select document and you don't choose any document field or document type. Okay, you leave those parts empty. Client settings, this is when we want it to be connected to the public checklist. So we can choose that to open it. And then if it is a document I can actually that I have a template for that the family needs to fill out, I'm going to be able to upload that document so that they can download that document. And gosh, I'm in a new site, so I'm going to end up putting in an image for this. I don't have a lot of these documents ready to go on this computer, so I'm right now I've got an image that I've used. If you don't want to deal with a document that's not appropriate for your function, and you'd rather have the family fill out a form, you can select the form. So I won't be building a public form today here, but this would be a selection of all of the public forms that you have. So these are all family-based public forms that are labeled as public forms. And that's just a setting. So I could choose, I want to take them, if this were the application, to the part 1 of the application so that they can toggle through. And here I'm going to leave that empty. I can also put in instructions. So it might be that, like, I'm thinking sort of about background checks, is you need to download this information and you need to take this to your fingerprinting office. That's important information to share with them right here in relation to that specific checklist item. You might want them to say, like for the tax return, it's that we need pages 1 and 2 of your tax return. We don't need the whole thing. We just need these components of it. That is important information that you can share with the clients. Okay. Or you can choose to not, right? So any of these things are enter them or don't. You have that choice. The last thing, well, there are 2 more things. So I'm going to talk to both of them and then we'll show you how this works. The checklist item criteria is what allows you to say this is to be opened up for a client when something else happens. So it's often for agencies that have multiple programs. So when case program equals A versus B. It could also be for when family state equals A versus B. I would say that those are really clear examples. There's so many potential filters that you could have here. You can really use anything from the family side. So it's sort of like endless, but I think those are pretty concrete examples. And I'll just show how that functions so that you see that. So you're going to select the table where that field is. First, you have to know what you want it to be criteria by. I understand, but I am on a call. So could you be quieter? Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so let's say that I was choosing the case program. And at the case, so would be under the case table, and then I'm going to select the field that it's for, and then I will tell Sam, oh, well, when it equals domestic or when it equals foster care, when it does not equal, right? So I've got a choice in my operators of what to choose, and it's trial and error or get some advice from our team if it doesn't make sense. Trial and error would be, is it showing up the way that we think that it should? And if not, do we need to make changes to it? Going back and making changes before you actually push it out live for your clients. Okay. You can also have more. Okay, so you could add a whole nother layer to the criteria. So it doesn't have to be specific. I'm going to keep mine just because my sample data is pretty limited in this site empty, and what I just showed you is how to get rid of them as well. The configuration memo is for your team. It is really even for your team. It's really for your admins who are administering this, and it will be just a note to sort of remind you of why you set up such a this task. A couple years from now, when you may have struck the lottery and may not actually be working at the organization anymore, or our memories just we don't always remember why we set something up. That has happened so many times, and Sam will definitely help us figure out how it's being used, but any context that you can provide would be helpful. Okay, so let me go back up to the top and just, I'm not going to go through it all again because I think I've sort of covered that, but making sure that you see that the things are what is entered. You're always going to put it in a checklist section. So these two are the only ones that are required is how am I organizing it and what is the actual checklist section. Everything else is a decision of is this important for this specific task. The responsible employee is going to allow that person to be somewhat notified from the homepage or through a report if it's done. The documents, whether or not we're showing it, this is the part that's important for public forms, and then any criteria. Save. Okay, so now I'm going to go through a little bit quicker, and I'm going to show adding, actually, before I go to that, I'm going to, here is my application process. So this is what it looks like. I do want you to take note that it's not automatically entered, so it actually isn't going to show up on the client record, even though I've got it here. It doesn't know when to show up yet. And so I can set that through this little edit link here. And I will tell it when the case, let's say the application receive date is entered, is when I want this application process section to open. Okay, so now it will open anytime the application receive date is entered for any family. All right, so now I'm going to add a new item, and I'm going to do this in a way, I'm going to put it on the application form, and I'm going to put it on a different table because this is an error that people see often, and it throws people off of like, are they doing it right? So I'll just do a home visit date. So now I've just selected. I can choose a response time if I want. I'm going to keep this sort of simple because these things are optional. But what happens right here when you have one section with multiple checklist items on it, like we do here, I'm going to hide this one so we can see the application process. This one's on the case. This one is on the home study. We get this error, and this is what a lot of times Sam or clients write and say, oh my gosh, what did I do? What have I done wrong? And you haven't done anything wrong. It's just wanting you to recognize that you might expect, for example, this to show up per home study, and it's not going to. It's going to show up per case because that's the table that it's on. So it may look to your team that it's already been entered because it has. Even if you have multiple home studies under that case, it's not going to be empty again for the new home study unless that field were on the home study table. Okay. So couple things that you can do are, one, you can dismiss the alert, then it goes away. Okay, it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It's totally fine to do that. It can make a lot of sense to do that too, if that's what you need. Otherwise, we can edit the checklist item, which can take you right here to the offending, like in air quotes, the offending item that Sam is catching. And what this might be is for us to actually create a new of like, this is our home study process. Did I spell that right? Nope, there we go. And then press save, and now that error is gone because now I have two sections for the application process and the home study process. And this home study process, I would then set it to be like coming off the home study when I send, where is it called? The home study packet sent date. When I send a welcome letter out to the family to tell them about the home study, this section populates. Okay. I would love to open it up. That does come up fairly often. Open it up to anybody who might have a question about that setup. Let me get my notes. Okay. All right. Let me see here. Okay. All right. So I've done all of those things. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is now showing you what this looks like from the family side. So, a couple things that you can do is have a test record. I think it's absolutely imperative for your training, but it also having a single test record with a common password will help you to um, get to this information quickly, okay, and see what you've done. So, settings, public forms, and then I'm going to go to the family case checklist. So, here you are always going to have to log in. So, I'm going to put in this and I'm going to type in my password. Something that I want to mention here is just sort of the styling of it. The styling is coming from public forms header footer. I'm working with an agency that wants a different style for a different checklist, and that is done under advanced options. You can actually put a different header and footer on each specific form or checklist item that or checklist page the form that you're working on if you want to have a little different branding going on for different ones, and I'll show you that in a second. When we get here, let's look here and actually go on. So I'm back on my client record, and this has got a case. Let me go back to this cover page. Both. So what I'm going to do is actually add a new case to show you a little bit something different also that you may not have known where that was. Put this in a different program. And then I am going to enter the application receive date because on this new case, I want the section to be opened up, right? The application section so that we can look at that on our checklist. And save that. Now over here on our case checklist, I've got this application process. Okay. And if I go here to their public form, we now have 3, and here is my information. So this is what the client sees. This is the field that we have on our checklist, is the actual checklist item. They can download, right? And this is just the image that I had. Of course, for you guys, it's going to be the specific document we want that family to complete. And then when they're done, they come back here and they upload the document. And they'll upload it. Let's see. Let's stick a different document in. A family cannot, they cannot download the document that they've uploaded. So that it's the way that the system sees it is like they don't have permissions to that. They should be able to re-upload the document. Goodness, come on. Over, and I'll show you how they can do that. We have noticed some errors with that, and people are letting us know. Click here, and this is what it'll look like. So this site also has the error right now where it doesn't allow them, but they should be able to upload and replace. Okay. When it is done, the date gets entered. It gets uploaded here. If I go back to the client site and refresh this page, it looks complete on their side as well. So the date, the document, and we can download the document. This is the document that I uploaded, right? Different document. That document, just because we talked about documents itself, is actually found over here. And it was, gosh, I can't remember what I called it. The adoption agreement was this here. And there's that document again. As far as testing goes, again, I really recommend that you have a test record in your site. On a public form, though, over here, you can advanced options, um, really advanced options, and then click open random record. And this sort of opens it. Let me go ahead and log out because it's looking like the same record. Although there honestly aren't a lot of records in this site. And so it's going to continue to pull up my same client that we've been working on, but it goes ahead and opens it up. But this could be any record, right? So it may or may not be a client that you're working on, or a test record. If in this case you want a different record, let me actually see if that we have other family records. We do. So they've got an entity type 10. And this is a little technical, but I can change the family type. The other thing I want to do is get their case. And there's record history. For some agencies have it on the sidebar where it'll tell us their case ID. Also, case ID is 10 too. So here, I'm going to go here and change the case ID. And now I'm looking at this family, and they just particularly don't have the checklist items. So I could go back to them, enter the application receive date, and now that family will have the checklist items. Okay, and so we can see that. Okay, the other thing that I want to show you today is on the public forms. You should all have a site called Family Portal. And I think we may have done this together a couple months back when we were building the family portal together. But in case you don't, the portal is a public view only form. Okay, so you can create a brand new family portal or new portal for a family if you wanted it to be really different by building a new form that's set as view only that is a public form. That's really all it is. It's not really special in any way other than that. But then under advanced options, advanced form properties, one of the things that you'll need is the sidebar. So I like to use the browser's find function, Control F, to find things. The sidebar being enabled for client forms, and it needs to be set as yes. When I go back up and go to the form, under advanced options, I'll have this sidebar links manager. There are guides on this in the site as well as webinars. I think we've done entire webinars just on sidebar links. And this shows all of the links that you want to be available to the client on the family portal. And it can vary. It really does vary wildly what's available here. When you're adding a checklist, well, let's start from the beginning because I think it should be fine for us actually to have checklist shown twice. Label your your item checklist 2. And someone did ask this: can we have different checklists shown for different parts of the process down the list? And that's not available right now. So I'm just labeling it 2 just to start from scratch here. You can have an image. I'll stick an alarm clock on, and then you'll choose, in this case, a form, and you'll find that family case checklist. So this is, again, this right here is the list of all public forms that you have in your system relating to the family, where you can choose which one you want. You can choose the size. Well, there's just 2 sizes of text, small or large, whether it's enabled or not. And then if it is a type of record like background checks or like people that live in your home, you can add this little small add button. I'll show you what that looks like. It looks like this little plus here. And what this is doing is asking you to select the add form that you want to be included on that, which you would choose here a public form that's an ad. In this case, that doesn't make sense, but I wanted to make sure of noting it for you. Add there. It all all new things tend to go to the bottom, right? So here, this is the bottom. I could move this up though to part 2, right? If I wanted. So checklist 2. Over here, I'm going to go back to our family portal page, which is the page that I've built the checklist on. And here I can see checklist 2. Okay. And then if I click on it, it takes me right back to where I was. And both those links again are going to take me to the exact same checklist at this time. All right, let me go back here. And I guess because I'm in this like test record, Sam's not giving me the logout button. So I'm going to go ahead and go over here to make sure that you guys know about passwords. And then I would love to open it up for any questions that you have. Okay. So let me open up one more. Okay, there's a couple different ways on public forms that you can choose to have your passwords displayed. And let me open up one more so that we can see it. So this one, when it opens up here, will be this is the setting when there's no password required, right? It goes directly to an edit form so the family can, or whoever, the client can go directly in and enter information. They press save. The information is saved into the system as a new record. Okay, but this is going to be generally for brand new clients. This would be inquiries, referrals, and really regardless of what type of client it is. So we do see referral forms for youth to your program. We do see inquiries for families. We see some agencies have set up just a separate like inquiries tab. So regardless if it's a birth parent or a counseling client or a volunteer, whoever, all bucketing into a single record type that then is converted to a different type when they become more than just a interest in your programs. Okay, so this is really new clients. Once you have a record in your system, you should really recommend or set up a form so that it has a password of sorts. So it could be either a login required, which is what we see here, or a login optional. I forget exactly what it's called. We can look at that. But this is like, yes, I want to log in, and that's going to take you to that. Go ahead and put in your password information, or no, I've never been here before, and enter the form. This option here, the yes, no, is really only suitable for something kind of like an application form where it's close enough to the beginning of the process that we're not sure if this person's been there or not. More and more, though, I see applications being provided after your team has spoken with this and spoken and with the client and determined that they're actually a decent fit for going through, because there generally is a payment on this application. If there's not, it's something that your team has to do work on, right? They need to review it, and that it just may not be an appropriate fit. And so you can make those determinations beforehand. I'm trying to think if there's other reasons this may come in handy. And I think more and more I'm honestly less excited about it because it's more direct and specific when we get the family to log in. So let's talk to that. They'll need their email address that they have on the record, which sometimes we've seen it where they don't remember what email address, they created a new email address, all kinds of things may happen. They don't have it. So it is, though, the email address that's actually on the client record, which would be shown this is the client record here, and it would be shown on the site. And it can be any one of these records. So it could be parent one's, it could be the home email, any one of them will work. And then whatever password they have added. They can add passwords on forms if really, it is kind of strange to ask for a password to be added at an inquiry. That is generally not going to happen. The first thing that they'll need to do today is click forgot or don't have a password so that they can build their password. This will take them through questionnaire of like, what is your email? You know what? Let's see if this one comes to me. Copy, because that's InReach Solutions, and their last name is Allen. Sam will send an email and lets them know, cool, we've got your email, and then it would send an email. Let me go here and go over to my email. Know that everybody needs to see all my email. Skip out of here. Do we get an email from them? You know what? I might even get an email from that email accounts, just because email may not be set up. So that's something to make note of. Let me jump back over to it. Basically, what will happen, let me go here and share my screen again. What will happen is the family gets an email, they'll click the link that's there, and they'll enter their password in, and then Sam will take them to the form that they were trying to access. It works fine. I think a lot of times people don't remember their password. There's, lots of passwords to remember nowadays. So, yeah, there are password management tools that can be used, but making sure in your messaging to them to that this is an important one, they'll come back to that email all the time, or that to complete data for through your system, so they'll want to remember that, letting them know that that's an important password to remember. I think it's important. The only other thing that I want to show you, I don't think it's good practice really, but if it becomes just super difficult to get a family, because sometimes people are just not as tech savvy as others, and it just is, right? There is a login password field on each entity type. I've noticed sometimes it can be disabled because it's really been underutilized, so to kind of move things away. I would recommend adding that either to like the edit family form, or maybe even like the record history if you've got that. I think that could be a good one, and I don't have it on here, so I'll show how to add that field. Add a section. I'm going to click password, hoping that this is an add and edit form. Password. So I'm adding a new section to this form. Did I save? And then I'm going to add the field so that we can see it. Family. There it is. Login password. I think for every record type that it's there, it says login password. Refresh the screen and let me make sure that this is set as form. It was a view only, so I'm going to set it as view and edit. And then if I refresh this, I should have an edit form appear, and then I should be able to, of course, I don't have it. How do I get that? Form properties, edit form link, record. Did it go? We're in edit record. Why is it not there? Save and edit. Let me go one more time and see if I can do this. If this doesn't work, then I'm going to put it on. Why doesn't it want to show me there? Oh, because it's called family record details. Family record details. That's why. There it is. And after family record details. There we go. Okay, now it'll be there. And then I can set the password for the family as it's really last resort. Okay, last resort for sure. It's like, here's the password, so I can put in 1, 2, 3, and okay. And now I could log in as that family and share that password that I gave them and ask them to go ahead and change the password so that your team doesn't know that password. So copy email, reset, go back here. Let me hit a new family portal. Oops. Come here. Okay. and then sign in. Okay, so now they're actually logged in again. Okay, couple minutes left of this, and those are the things that I wanted to show you for folks who haven't been here before. Do you have any questions about checklists? Is anybody working on any checklists? Multiple checklists per entity, so that each different section can actually be their own. Right. And so I'm reading through chat a question that Steve had asked, which was about, and I think I already answered it, was about having different checklists sections per entity type, and that is not available. So the way that you manage checklist configuration is again by using this filter of sort of simplifying what you're looking at when you start to have lots. And it is true, it gets complicated pretty quickly once there become a lot or a lot of programs on it, or you've broken it up into lots of sections. So again, I think this is where it's important to sort of draft out, aside from Sam, what that looks like so that you can focus on one component at a time. The checklist will show up on the person page in the spreadsheet. Yep. Okay. And so um, we've got a question about the checklist being shown up for clients that already have data entry in their record, and the checklist was built after the fact. Okay, so Sam doesn't, let's say Sam does grandfather in the record at that point in time, because we all know like regulations can change and you might have different requirements for a client that started a year or two ago from clients that started now. So it assumes we're always going forward. If, for example, let's say, I'm going to drop out of all this stuff actually, all of this, every bit of it. If I added another item to this checklist, this application process, and put something on the case, gosh, I forgot what was on there. I'm going to put in application received date. I don't think that I had that one. I think I had application approved. Yeah, cool. And I'm going to add one more. Okay, so on the application, I'll put in the application approved date. So I've got two new items to this application process. And when I go to this family's record, it doesn't show them. So a couple things that I can do to re-trigger this are, let's say, actually I want to step out 1 second. For one thing, you'll want to make sure that you have, that this system even opens up. Okay, sometimes it does, it's not set, this part is forgotten to be done, so you'll need to make sure, and that's done over here under this, and you decide what date field you're going to enter first. A lot of times this is a form that was entered previously, or it is the last item here that was done before the next section opens, right? Because we're talking about sort of a chronology of process, and so generally you can look to the things above. Sometimes the things above are just a list of documents, and I've started to recommend to people to put a yes, all of these documents are complete and reviewed, so that your team's sort of signing off that those are all done, because that's, even though families may have uploaded everything, they may not have done it correctly. So having a final step, and that step is what sort of initiates the next checklist section, and it's really dependent on your process. So if you need help, I'm more than more than happy to help you through that, talking that through that process. And also I think of these conversations as that opportunity too. So if you have questions about your process specifically, we're happy to hear it, because it does help other people. The other way, right? So if that's set up, I think there's two ways then that you could do this. So the easiest way I've found is to sit here, go under advanced options, add section with items, and click on application process again. And it opens up those new items. Okay. And because the receive date is actually entered already, that's there. We could also, and here I'm just going to delete it in order to make it do what I want since it wasn't doing that, is to go in and re-enter this date. So that would be taking this date out, the date that triggers it, and putting it back in. Put it in as a different date. It can be that, actually, I'll leave it as the same date because I don't think that it matters what date it is. And now it's re-triggered. So kind of two ways to do the same thing. Especially if I had incorrect data entry, I might actually want to re-trigger it. What I'm not sure of, but I'm assuming Sam does, is let's say we had a due date and I had the wrong date entered. Does this get entered? Let me do this really quick just so we can test that since I brought that up. 3 days from the application receive date, save. So if I refresh this, we don't get anything. So I have to actually like put this in again. So now I get a due date. If I change this date to the 14th, refresh here, it's not updating. So let me see if I refresh this. Still not. So in a case where we have to we have a data entry incorrect, we actually have to go and update this data entry piece. So it's 9 14 14 20. Oops, I'm looking 9 20 and press enter. Okay, go ahead and save that. And now I've got a different date. So it is actually going to the root and redoing that. Okay, I'll leave a little bit more time in case anyone has other questions. Do feel free to reach out to the chat. I'm going to open that up too so I can see it. I don't know then if I have. Let me go back to. I'm going to stop share here and then over here. Okay. And I'll share again. Okay, so I'm not really hearing or seeing anything else. So wanted to remind you guys that next week is the community call where it's just an open forum. We do not record that. That was sort of requested to just be open to whatever people want to talk about. So if you can join us at 10 a.m. Pacific time next week for the community call on Wednesday. And then I did want to let you know where webinars are being stored. Webinars we're putting once they're recorded over here in our guides. It's a whole section. We're trying to break them up into like what is the topic type. So depending on what you're doing, this one I may have to copy under checklist and family portal because I kind of talk about both, which is fine. I'll add them in here and we're just building them most recent at the top on and on that you can see. So you can always come back to these calls if you weren't able to access them or get here at this time, or if you just want to remember what did I say because I talk too fast. So whatever works. We're happy to have you here. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us by clicking support. Help guides are found under the help guides section. And if you want to make a call with our team, you can click here and go to the schedule. Thanks so much for using Sam and continuing to ask questions. And have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.